Hi, I'm Daniel from Target Internet, and in this video we're going to talk about setting up goals in Google Analytics. One of the fundamental things about digital marketing is that if you don't set up goals for your digital campaigns, you're never going to be able to judge them and look at the success of them effectively. There are lots and lots of reports within Google Analytics, but actually goals gives you a whole stage further insight and information. So if you go within Google Analytics, you've got all your goals reports down on the bottom left-hand side of the page. But when you go into Google Analytics, first of all, there won't be any set up. So you need to set these up yourself. Now it's relatively straightforward to do, but you really need to understand the different types of goals and what you can do with them and the limitations of them as well. And that's what we're going to try and talk about in this video. So if you go to admin within Google Analytics, you should find on the right-hand side of the menus, you've got one that says goals. And you can set up a new goal. When you go to set up a new goal, it will give you a whole list of options about the different things that you're trying to measure. But pretty much whichever one you go through to, or if you set a custom goal, you end up with 5 fundamental options. So I want to talk through what those 5 options are and then how you're going to want to use them. And really of those 5, there are 2 that you really need to understand. So 2 that are really, really useful and allow us to get a lot more from analytics. So you go through, you set up a new goal, you choose the type of goal you want to set. We normally just go through and select custom because you end up with the same options anyway. And it will give you these different ones. Now the first one it will give you is a destination goal. A destination goal is somebody getting to a particular page. And normally you'd set that as a thank you page. And what I mean by that, it's that you get through to the thank you for downloading, thank you for signing up, thank you for buying the product. Because you know if somebody got to that page, they've gone through and carried out the action that you wanted them to carry out. So destination goals relatively straightforward. You can use them in a whole range of different circumstances, whether it's business to business, thank you for filling in the form, e-commerce, thank you for going through and actually buying the product, or if it's just signing up for an email or something similar. Relatively straightforward, but what you can also add to that is a series of different steps that you'll go through on the way to doing that. So a funnel process. And what I mean is, for example, if you're in a shopping cart process, there's normally 2 or 3 steps you have to go through before you get to that final thank you page. So therefore what you can do is if you set those pages as well, you can see where somebody is in that shopping cart process and also where they're dropping out. So it allows you to see a sales funnel that somebody's going through and where they're actually dropping out of that process. So destination goals, really important. You put the URL or the web address of where you want them to get to. And if there are steps they need to go through before then, you can add those as well. But even if there's not, it's a really, really useful report. You can also associate a value with that goal. So if it's an e-commerce goal, you could put a kind of pound, dollar, whatever the currency value may be against that as well. So that's the one we're probably likely to use more often than anything. We use those for e-commerce purchases, for people inquiring about business-to-business services, for people signing up for our email, or actually somebody just filling in a contact form as well. Now I could put those onto a podcast or a video page, for example, and I know you'd got to the podcast or video page, but I wouldn't know if you'd listened or watched. So you can see there's a bit of a limitation in that kind of circumstance. So that's our first one, a destination goal. The next 2 are 2 that we very rarely actually use. And the first one is a duration goal, which is how long is somebody staying on your website for? Now you might say, well, the average visit is 2 or 3 minutes. So therefore, if somebody stays for 5 minutes, they must be really engaged with my content. That's great, but what it could also mean is they can't find what they're looking for and they're lost. So it's a little bit of a risky goal to use from that point of view. So you can set them up, but you need to be careful of what it's actually telling you. The next goal is a number of pages per visit or per session, which basically means when someone visits the website, how many pages they look at. So again, if the average visitor is looking at 3 pages and somebody looks at 10, you might think, well, that's a great thing. But it might also mean they can't find what they're looking for. So those 2 types go, a duration and a pages per visit you need to be a little bit careful of. So we tend not to use them too much. The 4th one, and probably the most versatile and useful, but unfortunately more difficult to set up, is an event goal. And an event goal is somebody doing something within a page normally. So it could be somebody clicking on the play button of a video. It could be somebody getting to the end of a video. It could be somebody going through and scrolling down a page. And that's an important one for us because we've got lots of content. So great, you load the blog post up, But what about someone starts to scroll? What about when someone scrolls all the way to the end? So you could set both of those things as an event. We've got a really long sales page with lots of different sections in it. So you could go through and set an event at the bottom of each section. I could say, right, I can see somebody got through that particular piece of content. If you had a form for someone to fill in, you could put an event on every single part of the form and you could see how far through filling that form in people actually got as well. So events are very versatile, but you need to add extra code to your pages. So a developer does need to be involved in this. It's not actually that difficult to set up at all in the first place, but it can give you a huge amount more insight into what's going on within your pages. Because say, for example, you've got an e-commerce website and you have lots of visitors and only a small percentage of them is converting, well, actually, I want to know why. But all I'm seeing is people getting to my product pages or my shopping cart pages. I'm not seeing what they're doing within that page. So events can really give us a lot more detail on those kind of things. You can also set up more complicated events as well. So things like people playing a game for 5 minutes, then visiting 3 pages, then coming back within a certain period of time. So you can get quite creative in what you're really looking at and what you want from people carrying out those activities. So we've got our destination goals, people getting to a certain page. We've got our duration and number of pages visited, which we said we're probably going to avoid. We've got our event goals, which we said are really, really powerful, and there's lots of creative opportunities with those. And then finally, we've got a relatively new thing called SMART goals. Now, SMART goals is where Google Analytics, when you're using pay-per-click, so basically you're using the Google AdWords system, is actually working out goals for you. Who are your most engaged users? And you can't go through and necessarily manually set those up in the easiest way. So it's better to focus on destination goals, people getting to the pages you want them to get to, and then event goals. Now, within Google Analytics, you have sets of goals, and generally speaking, you have 4 different sets of goals and you can put 5 within each. So you've got 20 goals that you can set up. Just be aware, once you've set a goal up, you can't delete it. You can't get rid of it. You can change it and modify it, but the logic behind that is if you set it up and you're reporting on it, if you then delete it and change the name of it, it could get confusing on what you're reporting on. So be aware when you set these up, you've got them and you can't necessarily get rid of them. You can make them inactive, so you don't need to necessarily report on them, but just be aware of that. If you need more than 20 analytics goals, what you can actually do is set up multiple views of your analytics. So you go into analytics, you've got your data then, it's got 20 goals. If you need more than that, you set up a separate view. The problem is when you set up a separate view, it only starts recording data from that point going forwards. So what that would mean is that you wouldn't have all your historical data in there as well. And you can look at all the documentation for setting up different views in analytics within the analytics docs. But 20 goals, so you can track all sorts of different things. It doesn't just have to be your transaction. It can be different levels of interaction as well, and it will give you a lot more insight. But once you've got these goals set up, you get a whole load more reports. So you get your goal reports, so how many people are actually doing these things, and you can drill into that data a lot more as well. But most importantly, in my opinion, is you get multi-channel funnels. And multi-channel funnels is probably the single most important report in Google Analytics, and it tells you of all the people that ended up doing the thing that you wanted them to do, that is completing your goal, what channels did they use on the way there? So not that they came from email and they converted immediately, but maybe they came in from an email, they used a search, they did another search, they clicked on an ad, and then eventually they converted. Because you've got your goal set up, you can track backwards the whole way through that user journey, and you can go through and see actually which of your channels are working, but where they're working in the user journey, and how people are actually using them. So basically, setting up goals gives you a whole set of new reports and a load of data that you wouldn't have otherwise that will be really useful. So make sure you set your goals up. Bear in mind you can't delete them, so therefore make sure you're setting up the right things. But don't be afraid of setting up a number of different goals. Think about destination goals, and then think about how you could use event goals. And then you're going to need to get a developer involved to do that, but you're going to get a whole lot more from your data once you've got these set up.